So there's a bunch of new launch monitors coming out, and if you are currently in the market for one, you might be saying, well, should I be waiting for the Bluetooth or the Square Omni or the ShotScope LM1? And today I'm gonna give you my thoughts on all of those new launch monitors. I'm gonna talk about what I think of them, what I'm expecting them to be like, and how they compare to some of the current models that are already on the market. Keeping in mind that with one exception, I have not tested any of these yet, so this is purely my experience based on seeing a demo unit at the PGA show and looking at the specs for what these are going to provide. But as someone who has devoted their life to reviewing golf launch monitors, if that means anything and you want my take on these new launch monitors that are coming out, keep watching, that's what we're talking about today. Okay, we are gonna start with the cheapest ones and work up to the more expensive ones. And there might not have been a more talked about tech product at the 2026 PGA show than the ShotScope LM1. So what is the ShotScope LM1? It is a brand new Doppler-based golf launch monitor that only costs $199. That is the big selling point with the ShotScope, and sticking true to their brand, which is all about value, giving you good performance at a really good price. The new LM1 is not only going to be one of the cheapest golf launch monitors on the market, but it's going to provide a few features that we just haven't seen at that price point. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of the key features that make this so interesting. Okay, so the LM1 is just a launch monitor. As I understand it, it will not have SIM capabilities. It's not tracking a whole bunch of metrics and statistics. I believe that it's only going to track 5 metrics, which is ball speed, club head speed, smash factor, carry distance, and total distance, which for most amateur golfers, you don't need necessarily a whole lot more than that, especially if you're just trying to get some basic yardages and you're just trying to make the range a little bit more enjoyable. So I like the fact that it's not trying to add a whole bunch of extra data that probably isn't going to be super accurate at that $199 price point. It sounds like they've done a good job of figuring out what they're able to track accurately and then just providing that without all the extra frills. But two things that I was surprised to see at this price point. One, a configurable screen. So the fact that it's got a screen at all is awesome. That means you can very easily just set it up out on the range, look at your numbers. It makes using it super easy, hassle-free. I love this. But one thing that I think is particularly cool is the fact that it looks like this screen is going to be customizable. So if you only want to see your carry number, for instance, you can set it so that's the only thing the screen shows. The second thing that I'm excited to see at this price point is the fact that there is app support included. So if you want to be able to track your practice sessions, save your data, or just look at it in a different way, the fact that there is an app along with the built-in screen, I think is awesome. You're gonna be able to use this thing both indoors and outdoors, so again, adding to the versatility. But in my mind, the big selling point here is it's $199. There really is very little in this market that's actually worth buying at that price point. Even the PRGR, which I haven't had a great experience with. I've talked to some other people that have had a better experience, so take that for what it's worth, but that retails for $230. So for $30 less, you're getting a way better screen, potentially better accuracy, and you're getting an app. I mean, there is a lot to like there. And so for the casual golfer that is just looking to make practice more fun, get an idea of what their distances are for $200, I think that price point alone is going to make this really compelling. And I'm excited to see if it's even moderately accurate to make this thing a killer buy at that price point. Okay, the next device we are going to talk about, this might be like the sleeper one that I'm personally most excited for. This is the Bluetooth Rainmaker, and it's going to be $599. So just like ShotScope, this is the first foray into the launch monitor world for Bluetooth, and I think that they're doing some things really well. At that price point and with like some of the design elements, I feel like they are like squarely competing with the Voice Caddy SC4 Pro, which admittedly is a really good device for the money. But I think the Bluetooth, if it lives up to the promise that it's making, might be an even more compelling product at this price point. So let's talk about why that is. So first off is the screen. So with the ShotScope just a second ago, I know I said configurable, and what I mean by that is, and this is how I understand it, is that you're gonna be able to see all 5 metrics, but then if you want to see any one of those big, you'll be able to see it, and then you can kind of scroll through it to see the different metrics. I don't think you're going to be able to pick and choose and say, I want to see just carry distance and total distance. I think it's kind of like one metric or all of them. I could be wrong. Again, this is a preview based on the information that I know, but the reason I bring that up is with the Bluetooth, you're going to have a color screen that is configurable. So with all the different metrics that it tracks, you're going to be able to adjust what that screen shows based on what you're interested in. So the screen is something I'm really excited about, and it also has an included remote, just like the Voice Caddy. Bluetooth is saying that there is going to be over 20 metrics that it will display. The thing I'm a little curious about is how many of those are actually measured versus how many are calculated. So usually in this price range, what you're gonna find is that like 5 or 6 of those those metrics will be directly measured by the unit, but then all the other metrics are based on an algorithm based on those handful that they are actually measuring. I do know for a handful of these metrics, some of them will only be available within the Bluetooth app, so I don't know what that means for these specifically around whether or not they are actually directly measured or if they are calculated, but that remains to be seen. But either way, 20 plus metrics at $599, just that alone, if it's accurate, is really compelling. And so this is where I start to have a lot of questions around the Bluetooth. So I mentioned one of the benefits of the shot scope is the fact it's only giving you 5 metrics. So it's only doing the things it knows it's going to be able to do pretty accurately. When you have 20 plus metrics at this price point, it makes you kind of wonder, well, how accurate are they going to be? And in this kind of like $500 price range, you know, with the SC4 Pro and the Garmin R10, for instance, I've had kind of a mixed bag of accuracy when it comes to some of these calculated metrics. So how successful this Bluetooth launch monitor is going to be, I think, will come down to, well, how accurately is it actually capturing a lot of this information? And if many of them aren't accurate, then maybe should they have gone with fewer metrics in order to focus on the things they could really get 100% correct? Time will tell, we'll see, but there are also a few other things that keep me really excited about this Bluetooth device. It will come with E6 access, so it remains to be seen how many free courses are going to come with it, but the fact you will have free simulator access right out of the box is awesome, and also similar to what we've seen from Garmin, Rapsodo, and Voice Caddy. I think that if there's any way it can come with more than like 5 free courses, like if it can get to the point where it's like 10 or 12 courses, similar to the FlightScope Mevo Gen 2, then all of a sudden you've got an even more compelling story for the Bluetooth, because most of those devices around $500, they only come with 5 courses. From the screenshots that I've seen, the app looks really good. With some of the incumbent devices out there, some of the things that have been around for a while, some of the software, it's starting to feel, I don't know, a little long in the tooth, maybe feel a little bit dated. We saw that with FSX Pro from Foresight, but they recently released the new Foresight app, which looks much better and more modern. FlightScope, for as much as I love it, is definitely starting to feel a little bit older, a little bit more dated. And from the screenshots I've seen, the Bluetooth app looks like it's going to be really modern, akin to like Full Swing or that new Foresight app, both of which are among my favorites in the market. And then the final reason that I'm so excited about this Bluetooth product is just the ecosystem that they have built. They've kind of been doing it a little bit quietly. I feel like a lot of people still think of Bluetooth as a rangefinder company. You know, entry-level to mid-range rangefinders that are pretty good, but not necessarily anything super special. But over the last few years, they've expanded to not just have rangefinders, they've got GPS speaker, GPS units, they now have a launch monitor, they have a GPS watch. You have this whole ecosystem that all fits into the Bluetooth app. So that's one of the things I've always praised Garmin for, is once you are in the Garmin ecosystem, if you have a Garmin watch, then using the Z30 rangefinder all of a sudden is even more useful. If you have the Garmin R10 and you can start getting all your practice data and your club distances all within that app, all of a sudden all of those different accessories start giving you different information and they enhance the whole Garmin experience. So Bluetooth has quietly kind of been doing the same thing. Their new rangefinders that are coming out this spring, they're going to have GPS capabilities with club recommendations. So you'll be able to get your club distances with the Rainmaker launch monitor, and then when you are using the app with one of their new Captain rangefinders, it will then make club recommendations based on your actual yardages. Now we're starting to see quite a few brands do this. Garmin has their virtual caddy. Bushnell and Foresight have their new link-enabled technology. FlightScope has a version of this with their i4 rangefinder. But one of the differences here is that Bluetooth is doing it for a whole lot less money. I think the Captain Pro rangefinder, I think is going to be like $300. The launch monitor is $600. Usually there's 10% discount codes that are floating out there. So for under $1,000, all of a sudden you're getting smart yardages, you're getting club distances, you're getting this whole ecosystem that I'm like kind of excited about. I think that if everything works as well as they're saying it's going to, I think it makes for a really compelling offer at a really good price point. And the final thing I will note, and this is something that is kind of goes both ways, is there is a subscription in order to unlock all of the features with all of their different devices in the Bluetooth app. But what I like about it is it's actually like super reasonably priced. It is $99 for 3 years. So that essentially works out to $33 per year. And depending on the device, I think you might even get your first year of that free. So $33 a year to enable everything that this ecosystem could provide, I think is really interesting. Now, again, none of this matters if it doesn't work well. None of this matters if the launch monitor isn't accurate. But based on everything I've seen so far, the fact Bluetooth now has 2 new connected rangefinders coming out, the launch monitor, and the new Player Pro speaker, which is the follow-up to what has been my favorite golf GPS speaker over the last 2 years, there's a lot going on. And so this is one brand that I'm personally pretty excited about, and I'm excited to get my hands on the products and see if all of my expectations are met and if it lives up to the promise that they're making. I hope it will. it could go either way because they're kind of making some pretty big promises at a very reasonable price point. And, that's kind of a tough thing to pull off. So we'll see what happens. Also, I do want to say one more thing on this because I've had a number of people already that have been asking, hey, should I go buy the Voice Caddy SC4 Pro, or should I wait for the Rainmaker, or should I spend less money and wait for the Shot Scope? Should I get the Garmin? In this price point, here is my honest take. If you are in the Garmin ecosystem, if you have a Garmin watch, if you're using anything Garmin, go get the R10. I think accuracy, my guess is across the board, is all going to be relatively similar. So I think the added benefits you will get from being in that ecosystem will make it worthwhile. If you're directly thinking about the Voice Caddy SC4 Pro or the Rainmaker, which I think are kind of the most similar units, that kind of depends. My guess is that the Bluetooth is going to be a better device. Between the customizable screen, between the ecosystem, between everything that they're offering, if they fulfill their promise, I think the Bluetooth is going to be the way to go. But the Rainmaker is not slated to come out until Father's Day. That's like late June of 2026, and that is always going to be susceptible to delays, depending on production, shipping, all of those things. So if you want a launch monitor right now, I think you're going to be very happy with the SC4 Pro. If you like the idea of some of these other features and you've maybe been thinking about making Bluetooth kind of the ecosystem where you keep your practice, you keep score, you kind of build your golf game around this ecosystem, then it might be worth waiting. But unfortunately, without being able to test the Bluetooth, I can't say definitively which one's going to be better or if it's going to be worth the wait. Hey, real quick, are you getting value out of this? Then I would love it if you would go subscribe. That would mean the world to me and allows me to continue making videos like this for you. So I'll wait. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. I appreciate you. Let's get back to the video. Okay, next up, also at $599, is the Garmin Approach G82. So I'm going to briefly cover this because I actually just got my hands on this unit and I did a full in-depth review that I will link to below. But what's cool about this is it's half launch monitor, half GPS. It's kind of a weird combination, but once you start using it, it works really well and really seamlessly. So again, this goes back to if you are in the Garmin ecosystem, this thing is going to enhance your experience. Essentially, you're getting most of the same features you would get with a high-end Garmin golf watch. You are just getting it in a GPS form that has a magnet that you can like put to your cart or a carabiner that you can clip to your bag. But the cool part is it's this GPS, but then also has a launch monitor built in. It's the only launch monitor that I would say is realistically feasible for most people to take out and use on the golf course. There's a bunch of cool modes. There's a tempo mode, there's putting mode. There's some ways to make your practice more enjoyable as well. But when it comes to accuracy, in my testing, it was okay. It was a little bit off, but here's the catch. When I was reviewing it, it was February in Portland, Oregon. So it was kind of cold, it was kind of wet, the course was very soft. So with my testing, using my 4-iron, I will say it was like 5 to 6 yards off what I actually hit versus what the launch monitor was telling me. My guess is a lot of that comes down to conditions. If I was playing in 80-degree weather in Arizona, my guess is that the accuracy would be a little bit more spot on. So despite doing a little bit of digging, I'm still not entirely sure exactly how the G82 is giving you its numbers on top of just having that Doppler radar. So I don't have any super definitive answers for you there. But if you're looking for a tool that makes practice more fun, a wonderful GPS is in the Garmin ecosystem and is legitimately a launch monitor you could take out on the course, I don't think there's anything better than the G82. It's a niche product, but for the right person, I think it is going to be an excellent fit. Okay, the next one on our list, and this is another one of the most talked about new products, and that is the Square Omni launch monitor. So I don't think I have reviewed, certainly not a launch monitor, but maybe any product that has as much of a dedicated and loyal and rabid fan base as Square. The people that love these units absolutely love them, and they will defend it. I did my Square review and I thought it was very fair, very honest. I talked about all the wonderful things about it, of which there are many, but I also talked about a handful of things that, weren't so great. Some things that I thought could be improved. And you guys came for me with pitchforks. The people that love the Square, and they do not want to hear any negative talk about it. So it's no surprise that when Square announced the Omni, there are a lot of very excited people. So what is the Square Omni? So it's a $1,599 launch monitor that has 4 cameras, a built-in screen, and no subscriptions to get all of the metrics and to use for simulator purposes. Now that right there is really compelling, and a lot of people are saying this is going to be the launch monitor that blows away Flight Scope, it blows away Bushnell, it blows away Unicore, and it might be. but I'm a little more skeptical. Don't get me wrong, I'm very excited to get my hands on this and to test it out, but here are a few things that I'm a little concerned about that I think might keep it from being the be-all, end-all greatest launch monitor that's ever existed. So first off, the original Square, the build quality was not great. It felt like very cheap plastic. It did not feel like a professional level unit by any stretch of the imagination. I'm curious to see what the build quality is like on the new Square. So I saw it briefly at the PGA show. The design, in my opinion, it's kind of funky. Like it's kind of weird looking. You know, the built-in screen is not necessarily the most legible. I thought the text was kind of small, so it didn't necessarily, to me, look and feel like a professional level launch monitor, especially when you compare it to the Launch Pro and to the Unicores of the world out there. But I think the area that I'm most concerned about is software. So the Square software is fine. Like, it's serviceable. They actually have kind of a cool model where instead of paying a subscription, you basically pay per hole that you're playing on a simulator basis. And it's very affordable. Like, it ends up realistically being cheaper to use the built-in Square simulator stuff than if you were paying a more expensive subscription elsewhere. But the reality is, the simulator software, it's fine. Like, it's certainly not best in class by any means. The range and the practice software, it's fine, but it's certainly not like best in class by any means. So I'm curious to see if Square is going to come out with a whole new app that is going to compete with the likes of like Bushnell, Foresight, or Unicore, because in my mind, either of those two brands, the software is just so far ahead of where the Square software is currently that even if accuracy is relatively similar, I would much rather use the new Foresight app or use the Unicore View app for all my practice sessions. There is one very big caveat to this, however, and that is GS Pro. If you are looking to pretty much only use GS Pro, then I think the Omni is going to be a very compelling option for it, for one big reason, and that is that there is no additional subscription to use third-party software with the Omni. So with the Bushnell Launch Pro, if you want to use GS Pro, you have to have their $500 a year gold subscription. You will then have to pay $250 a year for your GS Pro license. So it's $750 a year to play GS Pro on the Launch Pro. With Unicore, I believe it's a $300 subscription to be able to use third-party software. It's either like $200 or $300, but either way, that's $200 or $300 more than you would have to pay with the Square Omni. So you just pay the $250 to GS Pro and away you go. This is the same way that FlightScope does it as well. FlightScope just uses a Doppler unit as opposed to an optical camera-based unit. Both of those have their pros and cons. But if you were specifically looking to use GS Pro, I think either of those two devices are probably going to be a better fit just because it is so much cheaper to do so on an annual basis. So all that to say, I'm really excited to try it out. I'm excited to see if it is that much better than the original Square. I'm excited to see how it stacks up against more premium, really like professional level launch monitors like the Launch Pro, like the Unicore iMini. I'm curious to see how the software compares from some of these bigger companies that have really invested heavily in optimizing their software and rolling out new features. Because to me, that's where you really live. You are living in the software. And so if the software isn't as robust or not as enjoyable to use, then I'm probably going to gravitate towards something else. But the fact it is cheaper than either of those units I mentioned, plus it doesn't have a subscription, plus it has a 4-camera system, all of those things bode really well, and I think there is potential that this will be one of the biggest selling new launch monitors of the year. But time will tell, and we'll find out if my concerns are valid or not once I get one to review here in the next couple months. So those were kind of the biggest launch monitor releases that have been on my radar and we're talking about. There's two more I do want to bring up pretty quickly. The first one is the GolfJoy Spica 3. So this is one I admittedly do not know quite as much about, but it's one a lot of people have been asking me about lately because it seems like it's kind of a direct competitor to the Bushnell Launch Pro or the Foresight GC3, but with a few added benefits. So I don't know if this is true, but my impression is that GolfJoy is basically the public-facing version of a factory and of a manufacturer based in China. And so this feels similar to what Milesea has done recently. So Milesea with rangefinders, with speakers, as I understand it, that was a manufacturer that was manufacturing rangefinders for other companies. And so they said, well, hey, why don't we create our own brand? We're going to create the best rangefinders we can. We can go direct to consumer, cut out the middleman, and we're going to make more money. Milesea has created some of the best products I've seen over the last year and really kind of surprised me with how good the quality has been. So I think GolfJoy is kind of a similar deal. I don't know this for sure. I don't know if they have anything to do with Foresight and Bushnell, but admittedly, the Spica 3 does look very similar to the Launch Pro or the GC3 and has a lot of similar features. So even though I haven't tested this, based on kind of what I've seen it seems like the big selling point here is the fact that you're getting what appears to be the same accuracy of something like a GC3 or a Launch Pro, but with no subscription. So you're getting a touchscreen, you're getting 27 different ball and club metrics, you're getting a whole bunch of stuff, but you only pay one time, you never have additional stuff to pay, and that is going to be really compelling. It seems like that lack of subscription is going to be the differentiator between a lot of different units with some of the incumbents that have been out for a while. The question is that GolfJoy software going to be any good? This is similar to going back to Square. Like, I have my concerns about the Square software versus the Foresight software, which I think has gotten to the point where it's very refined, especially with the new Foresight app. So time will tell there. Is that going to pay off? Is it going to make it more worthwhile to take a chance on some of these newer companies that we might not be as familiar with, that might not have the track record that someone like Bushnell or Unicor has? We'll find out. But I'm excited to hopefully try out the Spica 3 because people have been asking me about it a lot. And it does seem like it offers something pretty compelling on paper if that software ends up being good, if things end up being accurate, and it does have the performance that it seems like it might. So we'll see. And finally, the last one I want to mention is kind of a little bit of a wild card, and that is the new overhead unit from Rapsodo. So as you probably know, the Rapsodo MLM2 Pro has been wildly successful as a sub $1,000 consumer device. So the fact they all of a sudden have an overhead unit is kind of interesting. So even though it's going to be affordable by overhead standards, it's still going to be like $6,000, $6,500, and that's a lot of money. And so I wonder if people have the space and they're doing a full simulator build out where there is an overhead unit, are they looking for a budget unit? You know, budget being relative at this price point. Unicor also has the iXR, which is $7,000, and Unicor's software, as I've mentioned, is excellent, so they have a little bit of a head start there. I am excited because as part of this, Rapsodo will be releasing new PC-based software, and based on the tests that I saw at the PGA show, it looks really good. Graphics look good, it looks like it's going to be great, but coming from a brand that has been known for more consumer-focused products to go to a $6,000 plus, more professional level product, how are people going to respond to that? And are they going to be able to catch up to some of these brands that have a little bit of a head start? And in this overhead market, are people price sensitive enough to want something like this? Or if you're doing the full build out, are you willing to spend, 10 grand or more on something like a Foresight Hawk or a Foresight Falcon? I don't know the answers, but I'm curious to see once this thing comes out, what the response looks like, because on paper, it does look really compelling. One thing I want to note is as these new products come out and I am able to test them, I will link to my reviews down below of each of these devices. In some cases, I've done more in-depth previews, so I will link to those as well. So if you're watching this months down the line, all the most recent and relevant news and reviews relating to these products, I will link down below. So go check it out. So there you go. Those are all of my thoughts on the new launch monitors that I have seen coming out for 2026. There's probably some that I have missed, but those are the ones that I have been getting asked about the most. Those are the ones that have been on my radar. I am really excited. I mean, right now, the person that's going to win in 2026 is you and me. It's the golfers. More competition means we're going to see more features, more innovation, lower prices. So the fact that there are now so many different launch monitor options at such reasonable price points is pretty mind-boggling. And so because of that, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of shifts in the industry. I'm curious to see some of these brands that have more expensive subscriptions. Are they going to be able to continue to sustain that? We've already seen Bushnell adjust course a little bit. Now, instead of only having the $499 gold subscription, you can get a $199 silver subscription for the Launch Pro, which allows you to get club data, allows you some basic SIM capabilities. That new silver subscription being a relatively reasonable $200 for what you get, I think has been a game changer for the Launch Pro, and that's the device that I've had the most enjoyment using over the last few months. I think the Launch Pro, despite being essentially still a 5-year-old product, has gotten really good with the new release of the Circle B. But are products like the Spica 3 or the Omni that don't have subscriptions, are they going to be good enough to have consumers say, you know what, like, I don't need that. This is going to be perfectly fine, and I don't have to pay anything annually, which is going to be really compelling for a lot of people. So all that to say, it's a really exciting time in golf tech as we see these ecosystems be built out, as we're seeing more products, as we're seeing more technology come out. It's just making launch monitors that even 5 years ago either weren't all that great at the low price point or weren't accessible for people at higher price points. Now we're seeing those prices come down, that accuracy get better, and all of a sudden it's feasible for most golfers who want one to have access to some of these world-class numbers from launch monitors. So I'm excited to get my hands on all these products we talked about, see how they compare, and just see where this industry goes in the coming weeks, in the coming months. With that, my name is Sean Ogle. I'm the founder of this thing here at Breaking 80, where we talk about cool golf products and cool golf courses. If you're still not sure which golf launch monitor is right for you, go take my 30-second quiz. You're going to answer questions around what you are looking for in a launch monitor, and I'm going to give you my best recommendation based on your needs. I will link to that below. If you're trying to figure out what to watch next, here is a recent video I did where I talk about my favorite outdoor launch monitors that I think you are really going to enjoy. So with that, I hope you have an excellent day, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.